Welcome back. Can you believe it? It was just 50 years ago that the Supreme Court invalidated laws preventing interracial marriage. Laws restricting marriage between the races, called anti-miscegenation laws, had been on the books in states across America since colonial days. It took the relationship and interracial marriage of Mildred and Richard Loving in the state of Virginia in 1958 to set in motion a series of court challenges that would eventually overturn those laws. The struggles endured by the Lovings and their journey to the Supreme Court for Loving versus Virginia is told in a new movie simply called Loving.
What you think? Like it? I'm gonna build you a house right here. Our house. Would you marry me?
Richard and Mildred Loving were two people that loved each other, and they didn't understand why the rest of the world couldn't see it.
I want to take Mildred up to D.C. to get married. Are you sure about that?
He was white and she was black, and our government told them that they could not love each other.
Richard and Mildred basically fell into a hot situation because they happened to just have a pure love for each other.
Can you imagine that? They came up against many obstacles.
I now pronounce you husband and wife.
In here?
Richard!
What you doing in bed with that woman?
I'm his wife.
That's no good here.
Sheriff Brooks represents what people thought. That was the law and the status quo.
Richard Perry Loving, being a white person, and the Mildred Jeter, being a colored person, did unlawfully cohabitate as man and wife.
Richard?
That ain't right!
Mildred was kept in jail over 3 days over a weekend when she was super pregnant.
Both the accused leave Caroline County in the state of Virginia at once.
When they were forced to move to D.C., I think that was a very painful shift in her life.
Hello, Mrs. Loving. My name is Bernard Cohen, the American Civil Liberties Union. Would like to help the UK.
Now they were fighting for ending the idea of being able to ban interracial marriage.
I believe this is a court battle that could go all the way to the Supreme Court.
There's no guarantee we can get them out if they get arrested again.
They risk the lives of their children, their family, themselves.
We're moving back to the country. I don't care what they do to us.
They open the doors for so many other people to love who they love.
It wasn't about a civil rights movement. It was about just two people loving each other and willing to do whatever it takes to be together.
I can take care of you.
I know that.
I love this story. It's certainly become far more known in the past few years in the more recent Supreme Court case around marriage equality.
Any time that we can be reminded of the elegance and the simple beauty of love, it's a good thing.
You realize this case could alter the Constitution of the United States.
You think you'll lose?
We may lose the small battles, but win the big war.
Is there anything you'd like me to say to the Supreme Court Justices of the United States?
Yeah. Tell the judge I love my wife.
Dr. Carole Bell is an assistant professor in the Department of Communication Studies at Northeastern University. Her soon-to-be-released book, No Ordinary Love, The Politics of Interracial Romance in American Film, is the first comprehensive look at the representation and social and political significance of Black-white romantic narratives in American film. Welcome to CityLine. Wow, this is such a complicated issue. For so long, the mixing of races was such a charged situation, and then the Lovings come along and stand up and challenge in the Supreme Court. Give us some background on some of the other things that were going on in society at the time.
Well, it's really interesting timing because the Lovings were arrested. The Lovings were married in 1958 and arrested shortly after that. But really at the same time, the country was dealing with the aftermath of the Brown versus Board of Education desegregation case that ruled that separate was not equal in terms of education. And you know, the different states had several years to sort of comply with that law. And so people were thinking about, well, what does this mean? How will this change things? And one of the things that was really driving fears about desegregation of schools was that people were afraid that that would lead to broader desegregation and to things like couples like Richard and Mildred Loving. Right? So the fear about desegregation in schools was not just about schools, but it really did reflect these broader issues about racial boundaries and whether or not, there was something inherently different that needed to be kept separate about Black people and white people.
Now, parallel to that, your area of study has to do with images of interracial relationships on screen and in the media. So talk about how that moved along with this, along parallel tracks.
So at the same time that the country's dealing with that and with these sort of unspoken but sort of spoken fears about integration, at the same time Hollywood is starting to respond to these changes in American society. And in 1957, there were actually 2 films that dealt with interracial romance and sexuality, released by major Hollywood studios. One was Island in the Sun, that starred Dorothy Dandridge and Harry Belafonte in different interracial romantic relationships. And the other was a film called Band of Angels, which starred Clark Gable as frankly, as a slave trader, but also a romantic hero who rescued a mixed-race woman from being sold at auction and later became romantically involved with him. So you had these 2 films in 1957 that were coming out, and even though they weren't necessarily championing the idea that we're all equal and this is a wonderful idea, they were still challenging the racial line in some ways. And because of that, these films were actually protested when they came out. So you had this really interesting juxtaposition of, in North Carolina specifically, of Island in the Sun opening September 4th, 1957, and the KKK picketing outside of the movie theater because that film contained an interracial kiss.
So over the years, how have images on film impacted society's perception of interracial relationships up till today?
Well, I think depictions of interracial couples in film both reflect and also contribute to our conversations about race and also our ideas about race. So I'm really interested in these depictions both for what they say about the acceptance and place of interracial couples in American society. That's important, but not just for that. I think these depictions really have a lot to say about our beliefs about race and the politics of race at any given moment. And they really reflect the norms, changing beliefs, changing values. And so these depictions, I call it, they're sort of a symbolic struggle, right? That's taking place on screen that really reflects a broader struggle that's also taking place in American society.
And of course, President Obama is the child of a mixed race marriage. Many people theorize that because of his dual background that he was able to become elected president.
Yes. So having that background and, he's the first Black president. He's also the first biracial president. He could really speak to multiple audiences. He could use his family background in an advertisement and say, my family from Kansas, right? I'm raised partly by grandparents, my white mother was a great influence on me, and my
white
family,
grandmother.
yes, and my grandmother from Kansas, and really claim that as an important part of his heritage. And he's always been someone who has been very comfortable speaking to different cultures and different people. And really his first sort of rise to prominence at the Democratic National Convention in 2004 really talked about that duality, not just of race, but also of parties, right? There's not a red America and a blue America. There's the United States of America. And that is very much in keeping with the message around there's not Black and there's not just white, right?
Carole Bell, this is a very interesting topic, and we're going to have to get the book when it comes out. It's called No Ordinary Love, The Politics of Interracial Romance in American Film. Thank you for being here. Just to, the tip of the iceberg on this topic.
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Up next, economic, social, and civil rights impacts communities of color may gain or lose when it comes to legalizing marijuana in Massachusetts. Stay tuned.